All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guests are Mike over
Frank.
here.
I was gonna say
Over
Robbie.
here, Mike
Yeah.
is here and Frank is there. They actually have their own podcast. It's called Perspective Shift, which I listen to all the time. And I actually conceiving Frank over here, and I was asking for advice about meditation and things like that. So today, I'm gonna ask him to jump on my episode, so we can talk about meditation and just how it improves your lives. Because they don't get enough of it from me. So
I love it. Thanks for having us, Crop.
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
of course,
Love
man.
it.
Perspective Shift. You guys are awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
I love your podcast.
Thank you.
And
We love yours too, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
As far as meditation, dude, Mike, you were telling me this crazy story about your life.
Yeah,
How
yeah,
you
yeah.
turned it upside down.
Well, yeah. So I feel like we all kind of stumble into our, awakenings differently. Kind of coming conscious to what's really going on, what this reality is, and so everybody has a different story. I remember hearing like Eckhart Tolle's story, where he was just talking about how like one day, he's just sitting there on that bench, and like has this epiphany, or in his bedroom or whatnot. And I was like, that's very different from what I experienced. Mine was like this slow crawl to understanding what was going on, and it was very much so from like a analytical thinking mind perspective is how I was able to kind of turn things around. I stumbled upon this gentleman, Dr. Joe Dispenza, which is where you and Frank originally met, which is super cool,
Yeah.
at one of his retreats. But he was able to explain to me these levels of consciousness in a way that I was, from a scientific perspective, if you will, because I was all, I needed the proof, I needed the science, I needed to know about it. Like, if I can't think about it, it's not real. If I can't measure it, it doesn't exist. I now know that's all bullshit, but I mean, before I was like, it was my way into understanding. So Dr. Joe kind of helped me understand that there's these multiple levels of consciousness and different levels of perception. And I mean, so like for me, my road was very rocky, very ups and downs, so to kind of bring it back, my band was signed when I turned 18 years old. I was the youngest one in my band. We waited until I turned 18 so I could actually sign my record contract and not have my parents sign it for me. So we signed this record deal. I know.
Would your parents sign it for you?
Well, that's the thing. That was how
It's like a permission.
we originally got presented a contract,
Mike,
and they asked
what
that.
is this?
Wow.
It's a field trip, Mom.
Yeah.
You just gotta sign right
Just
here.
sign right here.
It's like 40 pages.
Yeah. It was literally like, hey, I'm not going to have my parents sign this. I need to wait. And so we waited 2.5 months to sign the contract until I turned 18. So I remember doing that. And so I toured the world. I went all over the U.S., different countries, internationally, all that good stuff.
What was the name of your
So
band?
Ann Arbor.
There
so
you
like
go.
Michigan. Yeah,
Nice.
thank you.
Oh,
and
really?
so I was a guitar player,
Nice.
all that good stuff. And I had it was awesome, right? I'm traveling the world. Everything I could imagine is what I pictured growing up. Like, I loved the idea of like freedom that was offered through like punk rock music and music in general. And so I thought like, oh, that's how you get freedom. These guys look so free.
But come on, it was.
But it's
fun.
really
No, it was the best. It was blast,
Yeah.
best times. It
Can
was
you mimic
great.
that meditating now?
Well, absolutely. You can go way beyond that. So ultimately,
Even the chicks.
Oh, well, can't meditate
man.
that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I was in this experience where things were going great. And then, I was going to college at the same time. And I remember kind of after 4 or 5 years of being on the road every day, 10 months out of the year, it gets tiring. And so I was like, all right, I just graduated college. I did all my schooling online. And I was like, I'm going to try myself in the real world. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to start making some money. I'm tired of being broke. So I get out and I start, working these different jobs, taking sales positions, marketing positions, etc. And I start to realize, like, I can't find my footing in anything because everywhere I went and, like, everything I did, I kept, like, wanting to get involved in other aspects of the business and, like, help grow the business. And
Because
I would
you cared.
Well, yeah, I cared. And I was, like, part of it. And I was like, this is how you show yourself what you have to offer, But then I quickly realized, like, in the corporate world, that's not how you show what you can offer. In fact, other people, like other departments, are like, hey, this dude's trying to take my job. This guy's trying to suggest ideas that aren't mine. And so, like, there would be this, like, inter-office controversy. And, like, I ultimately would have, like, my boss or my managers come to me and say, hey, stay in your lane. Like, this is what you do. And I remember thinking, like, fuck, this is not like the business world that was described to me growing up by my parents and stuff like that. They're not trying to find people to promote them up into higher positions and grow a company. They're trying to eliminate high positions and get two of us to do twice the amount of work at half the cost. And so I started putting like these things together, and I'm like, what's a pension? What's like, growth at a company? That doesn't exist. And these were narratives that were told to me by my parents, growing up. Oh yeah, you get into a job, you work your way up to the top, and you're there. And I got into a job. I was trying to work my way to the top, and no, it was stay in your lane, buddy. And so I learned that, and I was like, this is not for me. And I was, at this point, I'm not successful in any type of professional corporate environment. I felt like I took a step back. I felt like I failed. I was like, I'm used to being this rock star. I'm like this. I was so identified with this other character, And so I was like, who am I? And
how did you?
I lost myself.
Have a perspective shift to change everything.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's where things. So I mean, at this point, I'm working a normal job. I mean, multiple normal jobs. Just upset about life, not happy with anything. Just kind of like. There's so much more for me. Where did I go wrong? Very in my head, just very monkey mind all over the place. And then, like, slowly things started to develop. And this actually comes in with Frank. So, I mean, this is around 2018-ish is when my parents and family have known Frank a long time. My mom's been getting her haircut at Frank's salon for a long time, long time. And I've always known great things about Frank.
Yeah, well, even your brother. So when I wrote my book, his brother did a commercial for it.
What's the name of the book?
Enjoy the Ride.
Yep, Enjoy the Ride.
That's right.
So I've known his family for a while.
Long time.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah.
And so, and my mom's always talked about Frank, and looked highly on Frank. Well, no, she's gone to your talks and stuff like that in the past.
You have
and
talks?
So, he used to on his book.
Oh.
Yeah, he used to do like multiple like things where he'd book talks and invite people to hear about these concepts.
Your brother Tom came with your mom.
Yeah,
at that time,
exactly. Yeah. And so I always knew about all this. Well, I started getting my barber at the time. He closed up shop or he moved or something, and so I was like, I need to get my hair cut. My mom's like, go to Frank. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I know Frank. So I started going to Frank, and we hit it off. Things were going great, and then we slowly started like getting into these like metaphysical conversations, just about. Everything in general. And I remember very vividly this time Frank was explaining to me, because I was just kind of telling him, I'm all right, things are going okay, etc. He's like, well, what do you want out of life? And he was asking me these deeper questions, and like I'd never talked about that type of stuff before. And so it started to really open up the way I looked at things. And there was this analogy that Frank gave me this one time where because I was telling him how upset I was about certain things, and he's like, well, picture your body like a guitar. And he's like, your experience that you're having, it feels out of tune when you're playing. And the reason it feels out of tune is you have all these different facets of your life that, aren't in tune. So you're kind of expecting this guitar to play in tune, but yet, emotionally, physically, mentally, drinking, drugs, whatever. All of these things are not in tune. So until you start to tune each one of these parts of your life, you can't really expect your life to play in tune, if you will.
That does make perfect sense.
And this, like, I had never thought that ever. And this, like, blew my mind. And I was like, shit. I'm like, this is so right. I'm running around thinking, like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? When all of my shit is out of tune. Nothing I'm doing is in tune. Why am I expecting my life to play like I want it to? So I started, like, really slowly doing different things. Going to bed earlier, getting up earlier, starting my day right, thinking differently, etc. And as we started talking about these concepts, Frank would share different people. And this is where I discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza. And this kind of helped give me a way to learn more about myself. And Frank, and it's funny to this day, but Frank gave me his password to his Gaia account. Yeah. His Gaia account. And he's like, hey, this is my password. Use this Gaia account. It's awesome. They've got stuff. I want you to listen to Greg Braden, listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he like gave me these 4 people. And so I started listening. And
Who were the 4 people, by the way?
I can't remember. I remember Greg
Guy's going to call me later and just can cancel me now.
Yeah, I know, right? Because we've been sharing passwords for like 4 years. So I've literally still used this Guy account today. But anyways, it's like, where I start like learning.
Dispenza.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden. I start watching all this different stuff, and it like opens my eyes like I had never seen anything before.
Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, and it all starts to kind of slowly click. And then from there, I start going to Frank's meditations. He used to hold meditations at his salon. He had a shop, and so after they closed down, he'd have meditation groups come in afterwards. So I started meditating, and it was through meditation, and then like after the meditation, Frank would hold like a talk where we could all kind of talk. And so during this meditation and stuff and these talks, we'd always get kind of surface. We'd always stay kind of surface level because there was different age groups within that was there, and we never dove too deep. Well, I started like getting more and more deep through these meditations and stuff, and I remember
you always had a ton of questions.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah, he did.
And so like I'd be like, God, I want to talk to him. So then every time I'd come get my haircut once a month, I'd be like, dude, this, and I'd start asking questions like, how do you see this? And we'd get into these very like deep type of conversations, things that like I wasn't comfortable bringing up in front of like a group of people. And it was like from there that I could see like Frank was like, all right, this dude's getting it. Like he was like,
But did you start applying that stuff for your life to change?
Well, that's the thing. It all kind of started happening together. So this was like that starting point. And so we started like, I started growing because of this.
Okay.
And so because I started growing, I started looking at opportunities differently. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to stay in this dead end job. I'm going to do something different, And so at night, I was like, I'm going to start, I want to get into real estate. I thought this was a great way to make money because I got into these concepts trying to create a better life, not necessarily to find peace, happiness, or wholeness. That came much later on. And I realized money's not what you want. I was like, I want a better life for myself. So I started applying these tactics in order to get a better position, like monetarily, like financially. I wanted to get into a better spot in life. And so I was like, I'm going to get into real estate investing, fix and flips, et cetera. It's something I always was passionate about, so I started going to real estate school at night. And then I got my real estate license. And then from there, like I was in this weird position where it was like, okay, I can sink or swim. Like I can quit my day job and, go full time into something that's commission based and that I've never done. Or I can try to do this half in, half out thing. Well, these talks and meditations and concepts and everything I was learning and, going through it, everything in my heart and soul told me, you dive right in, you don't half in, half out. And that was like the history and then everything from there, it just kind of grew and compounded like we've talked about. Now I've got a real estate team. I've got 22 different agents, 12 on the East Valley, 10 on the West Valley here in Arizona.
Nice.
It couldn't be better. Things are going great.
So you're a broker?
I'm not a broker because I don't want to have to carry the E&O insurance and different stuff, but I have a team of agents that work within my brokerage.
That's awesome.
Yep. And so we do that type of stuff. But the way I was able to get there was through training my mind and learning how all this different activities that we're going through in life are to teach us about ourselves and to grow from them. Where before I was looking at life as everything was just happening around me randomly. And, it didn't matter how I felt or thought about it. It was just going to happen the way it was. And for everyone or anyone at home listening, that's bullshit. We're participating in this reality. Like how you think about something, how you feel about it affects the outcome. And I was born in this Western world. That didn't exist. It was, everything's just happening, and you just happen to be this little speck of nothing that's in it. And that's bullshit. We're creating, we're participating, everything. And so that's kind of where my journey started. And, it was with Frank.
Look at him smiling over there, Frank.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Exactly.
I really messed up, didn't I, Mike?
you really opened my eyes, brother. You really
sound
did.
like it.
Well, I want to tell one more story too. Like I remember what I mean by this is like, so we're doing meditations and stuff, and I'm with Frank and everything, and I'm learning about these concepts. So I'm going home, and I'll never forget it. I'm on the freeway driving home. I can still picture the lights, like, and everything. It was that night after one of his meditations, and I had this epiphany that, oh my God, like, witches were burned at the stake because they were actually talking about, the spirit and everything around them. And what we really are is we are God. And I had this like moment where I was like, I think I'm God. And I grew up in a Catholic family, and so in Catholic school my entire life. And so this was kind of like blasphemous for me to like think this. It was like blasphemy.
Beyond blasphemy at that point.
I was like in my head, like, this is weird. And I wanted to talk to Frank about it, and I was scared to. Because like Frank, like he does a great job of like speaking with people who come from a Christian background, and he can have that talk. Well, I thought Frank was like kind of like going to be what's this kid saying? He's fucking God. Like, I thought,
you think Frank is God?
Well, no, I thought he was going to be like, I'm religious, man. This is kind of fucked up. And so I remember I pull him aside one day after one of his meditations, and I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you when everyone leaves. He was like, yeah, that's fine. And so I go to him, I'm like, dude, I was like, this is going to sound weird, but I was driving home the other day, and I was thinking about everything, and I was like, I think I'm God, like in my role, what I play. And he looks at me and he smiles and he's like, you are God. And I was like, oh my God. Like it was like the weight fell off of me.
If I knew this, I would have messed with you. Oh, you're the devil.
This weight fucking falls off of me. And I was so nervous and like uncomfortable to tell him this because I didn't want him to think I was like, oh, I think I'm God. Like from an ego place. No. I knew I was like the creator. And it was after this deep meditation that we had just had and stuff. And, you know, I barely scratched the surface with any of these different teachers and speakers and spiritual people out there. I wasn't even looking into that. So like I came to this conclusion on my own, which was crazy. And then Frank was like, hey, I want you to start listening and reading, you know, into these different spiritual teachers. And it was all teachers who focus on, you know, related to like, you are source, you are the entire experience, etc. And that's where my real journey began, because then from there I realized I'm not chasing money. I'm chasing wholeness. I'm chasing happiness. I'm chasing purpose.
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. And that's where it all started.
Know this: if you've never met me, you would have came to this discovery anyway.
Well, and that's
like,
another thing you used to always tell me.
Yeah, and that's the truth. Like,
That's
I don't
awesome.
want to make any,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about the people that have not met you? How would they be able to discover those things?
Well, you gotta
Seriously?
meet me.
You got to meet
Wow.
them. That's how it comes in.
Well, how would they start off? I mean,
Frank always used to
right,
say this. He would
listen.
say, I'm nothing but a mirror, Mike.
No,
I'm a mirror.
all we are. We're all a mirror to each other. So, for one, if somebody's listening to this, to some level, they already discovered it. So, discovering a gold mine doesn't mean you got all the gold out of it. You know, that's the thing. It doesn't end there. It starts there. So, if somebody's literally watching this, they don't need to hear me say that.
Yeah.
They already did. They found it. Now that I chose the side or found the gold mine, a diamond mine, whatever it is you want, keep digging. See what comes up. Mm-hmm. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going. So that's the advice that was given to me by people. But it's not the end. It's the actual very beginning of the new concept of ourselves as humans, as a species on this planet. As we start to go inward and then project outward, we actually, like Mike was saying, that we thought the world was happening to us. It's actually happening for us.
yeah.
And my projection onto what's happening is my perception onto it. And people argue over these perceptions. It's just funny to me because I'm here. But I used to do that. So when I say it's funny to me, I can only say that because I once did that and it didn't work. It just aggravated me. And
Working hard and all those other things.
well, just arguing over perception,
Yeah.
arguing as if it was fact. All right. So what is fact? Maybe the way people they call fact. Maybe the way they arrive to it, that system might be factual, but the information that comes out of it is not, or it's momentarily truthful or half truth, however you want to look at it. But everything that's factual still grows upon it. You know, they talk about like humans can live to. We found the fact that humans can live to 120 years.
It's at 400.
Well, but I'm saying then it'll
Yeah,
be 500.
yeah.
The Earth is 12 billion years old now. You know, it keeps changing. Now, maybe at the time they solidified to continue on to the next chapter, they had to give information, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But don't think it's done. So, what's fact? Fact is momentarily information that leads you down the road, like a signpost. I don't discard it, but it's not the end. That sign, that crossroads that says, you know, head left to the beach. Well, the sign that says beach isn't the beach. It's just a pointing thing. So I'm glad someone put that up there and led that. It makes my journey easier to that position. But that is not the end. It's just a signpost. So as we come in to understand these things, when we wake up and someone's here listening to this, they're already there. And it's not about comparing. Am I there like Frank is? Am I there like, you know, Mike is? No, you're there. Your journey then began. Our journey is our own journey. We don't know anything, but we will know if something is off kilt or something's working. We have that ability. We're pattern recognition beings. We know if something's working for us or we don't. It's that simple. If it's not working for you, try something else.
What about the people that say, I can't meditate, I'm too hyper, things like that? Well, how would you be able to help them as a meditation coach?
Okay, as a meditation coach, what is meditation? Meditation is becoming familiar with.
Or going within?
Yeah. Well, meditation literally means becoming familiar with.
Okay.
In Sanskrit. In Western, it just means to come to temple or to contemplate. So when you meditate in the form of meditation, like closing your eyes, you're becoming familiar with a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do it long enough, when I keep my eyes open, I'm going to want to maintain that feeling. So I'm going to, and if I'm feeling really good inside, as I step out into the world, I'm going to feel really good, and I'm going to actually respond to the world that way. Like if I'm running around saying, "Oh, fuck this shit," like that.
Yeah.
Which I was doing my whole life. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and
I was doing that too a lot.
Oh, this is bullshit.
Yeah,
Of course this would happen to me.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yeah.
good happens for me.
Yeah, no one's going to mistake me for a peaceful person. But when I meditate a lot and do anything a lot, focus, all of a sudden meditations bring me to a feeling. All right? I'm becoming familiar with this feeling that I want. And all of a sudden when I go out in the world, I'm not going to let anyone destroy that feeling. But when I do, I come upon somebody that says something that dings me. I no longer say, "Oh, I got to get rid of that person." I'm like, "Why did that ding me?" And I go into another meditation. And it arises. It comes in. I'm like, "Oh, wow." So next time the person does a very similar situation and says something, it doesn't ding me. I'm like, "Yeah." So I measure that. Again, this is based like how science is. It's a measurement. It's understanding. I'm not discarding it. I actually love science in the formulation, how it is. But the findings, them, are just momentarily findings. So I'm like, okay, what I've noticed when I did this practice and I went into my mind, my way of responding to things that I would respond like swinging at the fences, as they say. I'm no longer swinging at the fences. I'm actually more in control of my emotions, so those things don't bother me. And then when I realize when it comes upon and I don't even flinch, all of a sudden those situations never happen in my life again. They're gone. It's almost like, this is why someone could say the universe is actually testing you. It's not really testing you. It's showing where you are. It's a mirror. So if my hair's messed up, the mirror is going to show me messed up hair. I don't blame the mirror. I fix the hair. And I fix the hair. I'm like, okay, oh, that didn't work. Let me get a little more. Oh, there you go. Well, now I no longer have to look in the mirror.
Very true.
Maybe once I'll glance, it's like, oh, it looks good.
Just wink at yourself.
Yeah. That gets you in trouble, too.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so wink at yourself. That seems creepy.
Not really.
Hey, baby.
Yeah.
Looking good.
Yeah.
Looking good there. Talk to me.
But, yeah. So it's kind of like, so meditation, what is meditation? If you can't sit still and close your eyes and do breathing, I'm like, when you're driving your car, notice the material on the steering wheel. Is it leather? Is it plastic? What is it?
You mean wake up more?
Yeah, you become conscious. So all of a sudden, because my goal is, and it's not the ultimate goal, it's not for anybody else, my goal is to actually be in a continuous walking meditation. I might sit on the couch and close my eyes. But if there's 24 hours in a day and I'm asleep for like 6 of them, that leaves a lot of time. And if I'm only meditating for an hour, it's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
So you look at so how do I then walk in meditation? Well, I may start in the morning by closing my eyes and breathing, feeling good, getting everything else. And I'm saying, I'm going to stay here, regardless of what happens. So you start to learn to become indifferent. Now, am I totally indifferent? And the answer is no, I know I'm not. There's still things that ding me. But there are things that, why I don't get worried about that is because there were things that would really get me upset and no longer do. So this thing that's getting me upset right now, will eventually leave. I know that's a pattern. That's the recognition. That's the pattern recognition I know.
And does it help that you're consciously aware of that pattern?
Oh, hell yeah. Because now I don't freak out. Like, I'm like, okay, it's no big deal. This happened before and it changed and it got better. So even though it's really happening, I'm not delusional. I'm not sticking my head in the sand. But I'm realizing, okay, I've gotten past this before, and it almost washes away even quicker. Because now I'm telling you a different story or a different perspective because my brain is allowing me to do that. Now, the more I meditate and the more I look at a different perspective, all of a sudden when something happens, my default mechanism is give a perspective that works for you rather than one that doesn't work for you that was told.
In other words, the universe is working for you, not against you.
It always, check this out, is always forever working for everyone all the time.
But we misinterpret that. because
No.
we don't know. Well, no, but what I mean is like I didn't know that I was playing a role so stuck, and it was giving me exactly what I was putting out.
That's why it's working for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It
but
will
we
never
don't
lie to you.
But we say to ourselves, it's not working for me. This world isn't working for me because we think like it has to give you what you're thinking about that you don't have. No.
Yeah. But the thing is, when I say life sucks, it's not working for me. I'm like, you're absolutely right.
Correct.
Because you stated that fact. You were the
Exactly.
word that vibrated. So if you're feeling miserable, and this is the beauty of why the universe is always and forever in a positive setting, because there's neutrality, which is, perfectly even, where there's nothing going on, and then then you got to one side of positive, then one side what we call negative, which is fragmented. It breaks down. But just merely having a choice to choose negative is a positive output. So the universe is mostly positive in the way we look at it. But it will always work in your favor. What's your favor, though? Is your favor for you or against you?
And we decide our favor.
We decide our favor. So how we speak about myself, how I speak to myself is my consciousness, my awareness. Now, once I finally get used to speak to myself properly, what I call properly, more preferential, all of a sudden that becomes my habit. Now, but again, even as my habit, I can't live on that because I want to keep expanding. So I have to find consciousness more than unconscious. But now it's at a point where, okay, if I'm just cruising along, my base consciousness, my programmable subconscious, is working for me on autopilot. It's no longer destructive. There's a couple times where I get dings because maybe a situation hadn't come up in like 20 years that just came in front of me, a very similar one.
What do you think causes the subconscious to be destructive? You think like we're programmed that way as kids?
Well, the subconscious is a programmed mind.
Is it programmed to just protect you?
It's programmed. You put a record button on, whatever's said to you comes in.
Right. And you think the external world is negative, and that's why you probably have some negative thoughts in you?
Well, you're taught, like, in other words, you were taught, if this happens, this is bad. What's bad? And then you hit the kid.
Right. Right. Versus,
that's bad. I don't like that. I don't like being bad. So no one, you tell a kid that doesn't know any experience what's good or bad, they're like, what are you talking about?
It's like chocolate and vanilla.
But then you take something away from a kid that was pleasurable, and then you say, that's bad. Oh, I don't like that feeling. So they have a pattern in them that says bad, and you say, that's bad.
Right.
So then
they start thinking
this
they're
is why
bad.
we have a lot of issues around food and other stuff because we take it away. They had a connection with it, and but taking the food away wasn't in correlation with what you felt they did wrong. So it kind of really messes with the mind. So we're given so many mixed messages in the world, and now I realize I'm like, okay, that's all it was. Now I'm not blaming anybody because I woke up to it. I'm like, yeah, and now I have okay. How do I not blame anybody? I have to make sure I'm not doing it. And I send mixed messages a lot. I do. And I apologize for it. And I try not to do it. But I'm not always conscious. I'll say stuff. But I'm also knowing this. I'm not done. I'm not complete. I'm still working on it. This is why Mike and I do the podcast. I misspeak all the time. But I try to catch myself. And I go back and listen to it. And I'll go back and listen to it. And I'm like, okay. Okay, I shouldn't have said that way. I should be clearer on speaking because this can be taken out of context or whatever. And Karen's like, why are you being so hard on yourself? I'm like, I'm not being hard on myself. It's like I'm looking at the house I live in and it says, okay, I'm just going to clean over here. It's not hard. I want to improve it. So I'm not critical. I'm not paying attention to stuff that works. That works. Like that, I can leave that alone now. So I'm not being critical. I'm actually being, I want to build upon this thing. Okay. Will I ever get there? Hell no. But I'm moving in it. I'm moving towards a direction. But I'll never be complete. I'm far from it.
Nice.
And I started out that way in life. Well, the thought came into my head. When I was young, I was told I had a learning disability.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know what the hell that was all about. And I was like, all right, whatever.
Did you punch the guy?
What?
No, you're a boxer.
No, I was a little kid.
Oh, okay.
I got left back in first grade.
Okay.
So they held me back, and my parents didn't fight it, so I went back. But I was pissed. I'm like, my friend's going ahead, and I'm sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that helped me along was one of my best friends. He got left back too.
Actually, the complete opposite happened to me. They're like, hey, you just came to this country, doesn't really know English.
Yeah.
He doesn't really grasp the concepts. We should keep him back. But my parents were like, no, he just made friends. Let's just take him forward, and that actually crippled me.
All right.
Because it was tough. It was tough, bro.
But it also taught you how to be tough.
Yeah,
It's how you look at it.
Yeah,
See,
or
that's
just see the
it.
world from different perspectives.
Yeah, and
Really?
So for a while, because I believed I had learning disabilities, I didn't try. I knew enough to get by. Teachers liked me, and I did all that stuff, and so that was kind of my journey. But there was no I knew something wasn't true, but I wasn't going to let it get to me. But I didn't know, I know people that say I found God when I was 4. I'm like, no. I'm like, I would just go to church. I'm like, okay, why are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are we here?
My parents didn't bother.
Yeah. I would have these deep thoughts when I was in a tree, climbing a tree, or doing something with my hands, or doing something like playing some sport. But I thought everyone had that. I didn't know that it was weird. I didn't know. I had experiences that were profound looking back now, but I didn't know.
Like what kind of experience?
Oh, just I remember as a kid climbing a tree and just sitting there, and all of a sudden 5 hours went by.
5 hours?
Yeah.
And you were in the tree?
I was in the tree.
You had a
And all of a sudden
transcendental
it's
moment,
dark.
bro.
Yeah, and it was coming down. I was my friends had already left. I was up there, and I came down and I realized, oh shit, I gotta get home. Street lights are on.
That's when they used to let kids play outside.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I get home, but I realized what happened there. I don't know. I was meditating. I didn't know I was meditating. I wasn't trying to meditate. I got caught in the moment, and that was it. But I didn't try to go relive it the next day and climb up the tree at the same branch and start a whole new routine. I didn't. It just happened. It happened, and got home and got yelled at by my dad. I had to do extra chores around the house that day.
Okay.
So the only reason we know we want to be at peace, or we want to experience God, is because I believe all of us, at some point from memory of birth into where we were really told how to live our life, we were in that place. How would you know you want that? Because you had to have to experience it.
Yeah.
People I talk to women that don't have a strong desire to have children, and a lot of people come up to them oh, what you're missing, and they'll tell me about that, and they're why are they doing it? I'm like, listen, you only know what you know, because I could easily say to the woman that has 2 children, we don't know what you're missing unless you have 3. I'm like, that's just, you only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know.
We like to pretend we do.
Well, we do.
And we like to give our opinion to others about.
So someone can feel inadequate, for a woman in our culture not to have a child and make them feel inadequate, but they don't know why they feel inadequate. But once you have a child, you can't go back on that.
Yeah.
However
Definitely.
you may look at it, it's different, but you can't go back on it. But, so a lot of more people, every human being is spiritual. They just don't really label it that way, or they don't see it that way. But they are. I was sitting in that tree 5 hours and meditated.
Yeah, that's very spiritual.
Yeah.
But you didn't even know you were doing
No, I didn't know I was doing it. I didn't know. I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, for 5 hours you just zoned out.
Zoned out. Yeah.
That's awesome. Bro.
I would do that in class a lot. I would get yelled at by a teacher. I remember I remember one time it was a squirrel in my school. I think it was in 5th grade, and we had a lot of windows. So it was springtime. A squirrel runs up a tree and all of a sudden staring at me. I'm looking at it. Next thing you know, I did not see the squirrel. Everything just went, and next thing I heard, Frank. It was the teacher.
Oh,
and all the
man.
kids start laughing and shit like that.
You should be like, teacher, I bend time and space and went transcended into
That would
sixth
have went
dimension.
over well.
See what she said.
That would have went
She's
over
like,
great.
So you don't
Well,
understand quantum mechanics?
if I did that, my teacher would have, because on that day I
They
will
would've
pay
whipped you,
attention.
bro.
No, what happens after I had to go on the chalkboard, so I will pay attention to class.
Yeah.
Imagine I brought up quantum physics. I am in the quantum field.
Yeah.
100 times across the board. I'm like, that would have drove me nuts. But
Yep.
no, I didn't know what it was, but it felt good. And the kids laughed in the class, but it didn't bother me because at that point I would have beat the shit out of all of them. I knew how to box.
Nice.
Yeah.
They just laughed because it was funny, and I learned, actually I was taught by my dad to laugh at myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a good
So
thing,
I
bro.
learned to do that. There was once in a while I'll take things seriously, but I learned one of the coping mechanisms I had was to learn to laugh at myself. Now I laugh at myself, but it's not a coping mechanism. I just, I don't take myself seriously because it's just energy. And when I have energy and I have a thought comes through, like when I was a kid, I'll be in church and I'll never forget this. I don't know why this would happen to me. Be sitting in church, it's all quiet, and I'll look at some woman's hair. And I'm like, it looks like a freaking squirrel jumped in there. And I start laughing. And now I'm in church. It's all quiet. Like you hear stuff. And I'm like, and then I'm like, don't laugh. And then I'll start tickling. Like, Dad will like smack me in the back of the head. But when he would hit me in the back of the head, I would outburst laughing. Because now it's like he kicked it out. It was like getting stuck in your throat. And he kicked it out of me. I'm like, now I'm laughing. And then he make me go in the back of the church into the foyer to where I could keep quiet. And I had no idea why I was laughing.
Okay.
Maybe because it was a bottled up energy and I couldn't contain it. And the fact that I had to contain it,
laughing.
it was like eruption up. Yeah.
Because a lot of those places make you feel guilty.
Yeah.
So it's better that you're laughing.
Right.
I always like to ask people this on the last note. I want to ask each of you,
right.
you first. What advice would you give people that are in a bad place in their life?
Well, ask the question, go within. Why are you in a bad place? Why do you think you're in a bad place? Like, what definition is a bad place?
Okay.
Yeah, the beautiful thing is the question why is the most. And when I ask this of my clients, I'll say why. They're like, well, I'm like, no, don't explain it to me. Explain it to yourself. Most people don't know why they're in a bad place. And if you go deep enough, it's like, why? Because I don't have enough money. Well, why is that bad? Because this. And why? And all of a sudden you get to the point where it's crickets. Oh. Like you even tell us earlier, you were in this really low place, and you're like, remember this time.
Yeah.
Why was it bad?
Yeah.
Because someone told me it was bad?
Because someone told me that being broke is not good.
What we do wrong mostly is thinking we're doing something wrong. That's really the crux of it. So ask yourself, why? And you'll eventually get to a place where you have no idea. If you have no idea, how can you be upset? And then get over it. Then move on. And all of a sudden, your energy starts to rise. Move forward. That's it.
What about you, Michael?
Well, I mean, I once heard this guy say that once something doesn't make sense, that's when you can let go of it.
What's it, Frank?
No, I want to say it's like Bashar or Muji or somebody. But ultimately what they were getting at is what Frank was just getting at is the only reason we stay stuck in our patterns is because our mind, it ultimately tricks us into thinking it's real. Well, if it doesn't make sense to the thinking mind, then we let go of it. You know, like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Of course, it's not true. You let go of it. So you got to take your pain and look at it from that same perspective of, hey, actually, I got a family, or I got a house, or I got, a roof over my head, or I got food, or whatever. Find whatever you can be grateful for, and from there go, okay, I am lucky that I have these, or at least this, or whatever. And at that point, something kind of changes. There's some sort of gratitude there, and then that gives you a springboard for things to begin to get better. But it has to somewhat click for you and make sense or not make sense in order for you to get rid of it. So what Frank's talking about, when you're stuck in this third dimensional plane and you think everything sucks and the world hates you and everything's going wrong, until that doesn't make sense, you're going to continue to experience it. So it's our responsibility, each of us individually, to say to ourselves, hey, look, I'm going to take control of this narrative, of this situation. But how do we do that? By, not lying to ourselves, but making things, that we perceived a certain way no longer make sense. Like, hey, it doesn't make sense to look at, this that way when I have all of this good. And then that opens up, it gives you a little bit more space, some chance to breathe, and some room to grow. So that's like a big thing that I would recommend for people. I'd also recommend, thinking about somebody has another thing I've heard, if it doesn't matter 5 years from now, why would you even give it to breath?
Yeah,
and so you got to ask yourself that, like, hey, look, I remember that.
When I've heard this statement so many times in my life, but when I was like 22 years old, somebody said it, and I knew exactly what it meant. In 100 years now, because they use 100 years, not 5 years, because 5 years you'll still be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In 100 years, none of this will matter, and I fucking got it.
Yeah.
I got it. And I don't know, it was because, when I was 20, my brother died in a car accident. So it put me in a position to question everything, went to the complete mourning process. Mm-hmm. But I've always heard that in 100 years, that won't matter. But but what about now? But when I heard that, I really understood that, and that allowed me to come back to the present moment and deal with the thing now. It wasn't about sticking your head in the sand. It won't matter. everything is always resolved. You look at this history of the world. Every war ended. Resolutions came. Maybe other wars started after that. But everything resolves itself. The one thing that we're all scared about isn't death. It's non-existence. And you want to have a conversation about non-existence? You can't. Because it doesn't exist.
Because you're alive?
You can't
Because
have a
we
conversation.
always have existed.
We always have
existence. Okay.
Forever and always.
How are you going to have it? Like, you can't do that. So the real fear that we have is non-existence. Well, get over that. You exist. In some form or some shape, you'll always exist.
And you always have.
Nice.
You always have, you always will, you are now.
That's a great way
Yeah.
to end the podcast.
All right.
that is a good way.
You're always here, ladies and gentlemen. Check out their podcast. I listen to it all the time, especially when I'm driving. It's called Perspective Shift.
Yeah.
Spotify, YouTube, Apple Play.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right.
Thanks so much for
Jumping
having
on.
us,
Thank you,
Carl.
man.
Yeah, man.
We'll
All
see you
right,
soon.
peace out.
Yeah, definitely.
Great work
Take
here.
care.
All right.